And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Tomorrow morning's flying weather showing IFR here across southern Alaska and the North Gulf Coast into the northern panhandle and then down along the border, marginal VFR out to the coastline, and some marginal VFR and VFR here over the central northern interior into the northern Bering Sea, some VFR. Otherwise, marginal VFR again with areas of VFR out over the Bering Sea. And for the afternoon, lowest conditions here in the western interior from about the Kobuk Valley on down into Bristol Bay with areas of IFR, becoming VFR for the Yukon Delta, Nunivak Island, St. Lawrence Island, marginal VFR extending up across the north slope to the Arctic coast with VFR on the east side. IFR here along the central Alaska range from about Windy Pass to maybe Isabel, and then marginal VFR for the Copper River Basin. IFR hung up along the coast range here, Yakutat, and not much change from the panhandle from the morning hours. And marginal VFR, central eastern Bering Sea. Not too bad out to the west from Atk Island westward, mostly VFR. And now we've got VFR extending into the Fox Islands with marginal VFR on the north side of Unalaska Island, up across the Pribilofs to St. Matthew Island, St. Lawrence Island, and into Norton Sound here, VFR right on down along the southwest coast. Bristol Bay, marginal VFR. Area of IFR here, Kobuk, Koyukuk Valley down southward, possibly in the extreme northern Kuskokwim Valley, but from there southward, marginal VFR. And mostly marginal here, south central Alaska, Kodiak Island, Copper River Basin areas. And again, the southeast coast has the lowest conditions in the north and eastern portions. And that doesn't change much through Thursday afternoon. Still IFR here over toward the Canadian border. A little bit around Yakutat yet, but becoming VFR. South Central Alaska, Prince William Sound, marginal for the Copper River Basin, and a big chunk of interior Alaska with some IFR up over the northern Kobuk and Koyukuk valleys into the western Brooks Range, and then marginal VFR out to the Arctic coast. Big swath of VFR here from the Bering Strait, Seward Peninsula, right on into southwest interior, Kodiak Island VFR, and some VFR over the central Bering Sea, surrounded by a big area of marginal VFR covering the Aleutians, Pribilofs, and up to, but not quite, reaching St. Lawrence Island. Passes for Wednesday, and Atuvik, marginal VFR. Adigan looks marginal, and Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR. With same forecast for rainy, a pretty marginal day coming up for Wednesday. IFR for Windy, IFR for Isabel, then back to marginal VFR from Mentasta. Tanita also marginal, and Portage looking marginally marginal here, especially on the eastern entrance. And for Chilkoot and White, IFR. Freezing levels at the surface here south of the Alaska Peninsula, up the east side of Kodiak Island. This for tomorrow morning, and just off the North Gulf Coast and across the southern panhandle. 2,000 feet there up to Prince of Wales Island, and out to the west, 2,000 feet off the chart there, but at the surface now, still north of the Pribilof Islands. And icing, a little narrow band of isolated moderate rime icing possible here for the western Aleutians, otherwise icing free onto the east here into the interior. Considerable moderate rime icing moving up very close to the central coast of the Panhandle, but not quite reaching it there. And maybe possible considerable moderate rime icing for the Yakutat area. And the jet stream here showing the main jet to the south, 125 knots, heading in towards the Queen Charlotte Islands. Otherwise, southwest flow continues for the Panhandle, 85 knots. Much lighter here over interior Alaska. Big low complex here, the Chukchi Sea and the northern Bering Sea, and that keeping the main jet south of the Aleutians. 9,000 feet, we've got northwesterlies up to about 40 knots there from the western Alaska Peninsula out into the central Aleutian chain, light northern Bering Sea and into the interior, light and variable. Mostly out of the southwest, though, for a prevailing direction here. And then the strongest winds still off the coast of the Panhandle, but 40 to 45 knots here from the eastern Alaska range on into the Yukon. And at 3,000 feet, again, the strongest winds remaining off the coast and just south of the Gulf of Alaska here. Light inland, interior Alaska, then out to the west, a narrow band of northerlies or northeasterlies, anywhere from 25 to 40 knots, strongest here, especially when you get down toward Atka Island, up to 50 to 55 knots there as they turn westerly just south of the eastern Aleutians. And for turbulence, with those stronger winds, considerable moderate turbulence from Atka Island up to the Pribilofs, down to the eastern Aleutians, the western Alaska Peninsula. Light to isolated moderate north there, across St. Lawrence Island to the Bering Strait. Otherwise, not too bad turbulence-wise here for the interior, except the eastern Alaska range could see some moderate turbulence there, and also along the central coast